This crowd rises to its feet. Vaccaro slammed it home. Garland left wing, free ball. Perfect! Garland went to the lane, lobbed to Mobley. Pow! And Allen blocked the shot at the rim. Pow! With the left hand and a foul.
Welcome to the Chase Down Podcast, part of the Cavs Media family. I'm your host, Justin Rowan. The Chase Down is presented by Fubo, the official streaming partner of the Cavs. Watch over 350 channels of live sports and TV, including Bally Sports Ohio without cable. There's no cost and no commitment. Try for free at FuboTV.com/Cavs. We have news. Finally, in the dog days of summer, we have the extension of Jarrett Allen, and I am very happy to announce that my co-host Carter Rodriguez is back to help me break it all down. Carter, how you doing? How was your trip?
Doing good. First time in the Middle East. It was definitely a unique experience in Saudi Arabia, working on the Esports World Cup and checking out how things are going there. And, I had a lot of great Saudi Arabian cuisine, like Raising Cane's, McDonald's. I've never been to a country with more American brands, I think. But yeah, it was a very unique experience and definitely pretty interesting. So, but I am a little bit jet lagged upon my return. That's for damn sure.
That's understandable. You have a good reason for being tired. I have none, but we are just a little bit tired. And you know what? It's fitting. It's the dog days of summer, as I mentioned. You don't really expect a whole lot of news. And speaking of news that I didn't expect, the Cleveland Cavaliers gave Jarrett Allen a 3-year extension. I was very, very kind of surprised to see this come across my timeline. It locks him up for the next 5 years. Not surprised, that the Cavs would want to extend Jarrett Allen. But just given the way that the cap explosion has gone and kind of restrictions in what you can offer in terms of salary increases moving forward, I was just very, very surprised because, Jarrett is often talked about as one of the players that's on one of the most valuable contracts in the league. And to get him locked up for the next 5 years, I think is exciting.
Yeah, it's definitely exciting. And it's just another example of, the real G's move in silence factor of this Cavaliers front office, where it's we hear things every now and again through the grapevine, through folks, and I didn't hear anything about this coming. This was a total surprise.
No rumors, no nothing.
Yeah, it was just kind of came out of the blue, and I think it's great news. But it is a long, continuing a long history of Kobe Altman and Mike Ganzi in this front office just sneaking one by us, where we go, oh. That's news. That happened.
Yeah.
And I think to the Jarrett Allen side of things, I've made no secret he's one of my favorite players on the team. I just love the way he carries himself. I love the way that he answered kind of adversity in those first 4 playoff games, obviously before he got the broken rib or whatever the injury was. Was I thought really our best player through the first 4 games. I think if anyone answered the toughness test on the court, it was Jarrett Allen in that postseason. So, again, it just feels, I've talked a lot about the value in this new NBA climate of hanging around, because all these teams that are above the Cavs right now, or in the same stratosphere as the Cavs, are all flirting with that second luxury tax apron. And almost all of them are at the very least over the first apron. And here the Cavs are. They're not even a tax team right now. And, as these teams start having to make these really painful sacrifices, the fact that the Cavs right now are positioned really well to grow with the rising salary cap, with their core locked up, they just have a lot of flexibility. And that allows them to kind of just hang around. And if you hang around, I think in this very high parity NBA environment, and your players develop and you get lucky in a few different spots, then you have a real chance to make a further run than I think maybe you would have in an era earlier than this one. I think I really am betting on continuity being a high value proposition in this high parity NBA. In the second LeBron stint in Cleveland, tenure didn't mean anything. Continuity didn't mean anything. Hi Raptors, it's cool that you kept Lowry and DeRozan for all these years, but we have LeBron and we're better, so it doesn't matter. But there just really isn't that. There's no team that is that force that you have to arms race for, at least in my opinion. I guess you could argue that the Boston Celtics are, but I wouldn't make that argument. And I think there is a lot of value to staying pretty darn good for the foreseeable future. And like we've talked a lot about how high this team's floor is, and you talked about that a lot in your episode with Mike last week that I really loved listening to. And like this is just further cementing that high floor, which is, as a lot of Cavs fans know, something I wanted very, very badly.
Yeah, in this high parity NBA, the window might not be as wide open as it is for contending teams as it is in the past when you look back at those Cavs years, but there's more people within arm's reach of that window, right? Like there's a lot of people there. Maybe the Celtics are up on the windowsill. They have a little bit less
they
room
went through the window. They won.
Yeah, no, I'm saying
out.
now. That's old news. We've moved on from that. It's a whole brave new world. But yeah, like I think the Celtics are probably, I'd put them like a half tier above the rest of the contending group. But then you look at the Eastern Conference, and it's New York, it's Cleveland, it's Milwaukee, it's Philadelphia. That would probably be my next kind of group, and I think all of those teams have a chance to come out of the Eastern Conference, Cavs included. You're going to need some breaks. You're going to need to have things click. And when it comes to extending Jarrett Allen, whether you are a believer in the too big approach or if you would prefer to see the Cavs pivot, I do think that this extension it's beneficial in both ways, right? First of all, it was signed prior to August 6th, which means it is done prior to 6 months to the trade deadline. So that means if there is a all-star break pivot that needs to be made, trade deadline pivot that needs to be made with this team, you do have a little bit of flexibility there. But I've seen people talk about, man, Jarrett's going to on that deal, he's going to have so much value to a contending team. Well, I happen to know a contending team, and that's the Cleveland Cavaliers. I think he's got a lot of value to them as well. And I did see one bad faith argument that was talking about, there's a lot of pressure for teams when you have max contracts. Like you can only go maybe 2 or 3, depending on if some of those are rookie scale maxes and whatnot. And then they said, well, the Cavs now have 4 with this Allen max extension. No, it's not a max contract. It was the max that he was eligible to extend for. But when you really look at it, and I saw some of the cap geeks break this down, once those extension years kick in, it projects to be about 15 to 16% of the salary cap, which if you want to compare that to 2016, it's just a couple million a year more than Iman Shumpert. If you look at like back then in 2016, do you remember what the cap was, Carter? It was 70 million.
That's
it
crazy.
was $70 million. You got
players making like 65 almost, right?
Right. And that's on like the 30% max. So that just goes to show you like, how much this is kind of escalated. But at the same time, it's no different. I know the numbers can be eye-popping, but you always have to look at this as a percentage of the cap. And you got to remember that they're signing, even though it's based on a percentage of the cap, it's a percentage of the cap in the year that they sign. So as these increases come in, those deals become more valuable and valuable. And from a Cavs standpoint, they're in a nice position where you have your talent locked up for the foreseeable future. And that allows you to make decisions on your own schedule rather than being forced by a looming contract expiring to maybe take something less savory and less like if you're looking to make a pivot because, hey, this might work and get us closer to contention, that's one thing. But if you're forced to sell off a key piece for role players just because, a contract is expiring, that's a major, major setback for any contending team.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, look at like what Denver is dealing with right now. Having to give up picks to dump Reggie Jackson, things like that. Like, flexibility is going to be really, really key. And I think the other thing that's kind of fun about this is normally when you get a guy locked in on a value deal like the Cavs did with Jarrett, where everyone pretty much around the league agrees, like, hey, this is they're getting good bang for their buck. Normally that next contract is where you kind of pay the piper. Where it goes, okay, now I played for you on a deal. Now it's time to, back up the Brinks truck. And I'm not saying that the reported terms are cheap by any means. I think Jarrett is going to make the mortgage, but I think that like in the end, you're not in that space where you're like worried that you're gonna overdo it. With this contract, where that's. When you extend or sign or retain a free agent on a new deal, there's always that little bad thing in the pit of your stomach, And the Cavs have had that happen. They extend J.R. Smith and his play falls off a cliff. as he goes into the twilight of his career. And like there's a lot of that happens, where you have a bit of a buyer's remorse extension. I just think the number where it is and Jarrett where he is in his development curve, I just think the low end of this is very, very low, and the high end, whether it be Jarrett's just continuing to grow and develop as a really strong young player, or as you mentioned, pivot and as a trade asset, both of those should yield really positive results.
Yeah, and I think the rare thing too is when you have a team like this that they won 99 games over the last 2 years. I think everybody kind of understands that they should have won more last year if just everything didn't break the wrong way. But to have a team that is that good and to have basically everybody locked up for the foreseeable future, at least when you're talking realistically when it comes to the NBA, your windows are never longer than like 3 to 5 years, right? Like that's just reality. But you have 4 more years of Garland, you have functionally like 6 more years of Mobley, you have 5 years of Jarrett, you have guaranteed 3 years of Donovan Mitchell, and all of those guaranteed years, it doesn't really take any of them past 30 in a meaningful way. Like Jarrett will be 31 at the end of this, but it goes to show you just how young this core still is and just how much value they're already bringing at that age. And I think when you look at the Cavs taking a patient approach this year and seeing, okay, we believe that this group can work, we will ultimately see if they are able to find their footing and elevate beyond what we've seen. And if we have to make changes, we'll make changes, but we believe that this can work in a better context. Part of that belief has to be founded in the fact that they are so damn young, right? Like there is so much meat left on the bone here, and it's not one of those situations where, you got to, the Milwaukee Bucks as an example, where, hey, we believe in our core and we want to stand pat and we want to have some continuity. But when we're looking at our third piece here in Eric Bledsoe, he's not going to get much better than he is right now. It's time to consolidate. It's time to make a splash. It's time to go get Drew Holiday, right? And then when that ran out, let's go get Damian Lillard, right? Like there was no kind of indication that, hey, things are going to change kind of internally and organically. Let's go out and make a splash. And when it came to the Cavs this offseason, like, you look at some of the names that moved in trades and you see some of the fake trade and proposals like that. For some reason, where other teams in the Eastern Conference are adding, all-star caliber players, for some reason, the Cavs are one of the only teams where the narrative seems to be turn all-stars into role players, and that's going to solve things. Like that's not how things work in the NBA.
No, and like I think that's why in the end I haven't been too bummed out with any moves is I haven't really seen any ideas that have any legs that I think makes the team meaningfully better. And, I'd rather kind of see what the team can do with the roster they have, with a new coach at the helm and just operate from that position of strength, which, locking Evan up, locking Donovan up, locking Jarrett up, like that level of security and term on these contracts that are just highly unlikely to become negative value. Frankly, I think it's a very adult way of doing business. You know, it's just a very grown up, like, hey, we're just going to take care of our business. If anything interesting pops up, we will absolutely leap at it. I don't think that they're not active. I just think they're not thirsty, and when you get thirsty to make a move, you can get taken advantage of.
Or a better word would be desperate there.
Yeah. And I was trying to have some fun with my wordplay.
I like it. Look, I saw the temperatures when you're in Saudi Arabia. I can understand why thirst was heavily on your mind.
Let me tell you what. First off, so they had these fridges just full of bottles of water at the venue, but the bottles were like this tall. They were like so small, and I was chugging like 7 like in the first 4 hours of being there, and I'm not peeing because you're just so dehydrated. It's so dry. It's like, dude, I've been to Vegas. I've been to like, Phoenix and Arizona and like these, the American desert, bro. It's different levels of dry.
See, typically I prefer dry where humidity is going to kill me, but
sure, this is like I'm talking
I think there's
like
a tipping point. I think there's a tipping point for sure.
Dude, my backpack is a black backpack, and I put it on the ground for a second while I was talking to someone, and I picked it up, and my hand almost was burning because it was just absorbing so much heat. It's crazy, man. Crazy levels of heat.
It sounds like the backpack was as red hot as I hope the Cavs will be next year.
That was terrible.
Thank you. I couldn't resist. Yeah, I mean, the exciting thing about this group and like the whole theory and what we've talked about, like since they've been assembled, is year one should have been the worst that it fit, right? Like from just okay, this is a younger version of Evan Mobley. We expect him to take a step forward. We expect Darius to take a step forward. The fact that Donovan has taken step forwards the last 2 years has been a thrill. Like that's super exciting when you add someone of his caliber that just keeps working and keeps getting better and better. Jarrett's gotten better. And the weirdest thing, and you know, the disconnect is, year one, you had it where it really worked. The offense was clicking, even with Isaac Okoro starting there. It would have been the best offense in the league. It would have been, you know, the best defense in the league too. That's rolling. And then you go into the following year, and it's okay. We've now added more shooters, right? We're going to get 3-pointers up at a higher rate. You know, as much grumbling as there's been about kind of the Cavs 3-point rates and whatnot, like they were 8th. They were 8th in the league in attempts. Even at a lower pace, raw attempts, they were 8th. And when you look at basically from the start of December on, they took 38 threes a game. Like I'm not expecting to see a whole lot more. What I am expecting is how they go about getting those shots are going to put guys in better positions. I expect, you know, those guys to shoot better as a result of that. Hopefully health will also help in those guys shooting better, because you look at the lower body issues that they had from like the hamstring issues for the guards, Max's knee, that kind of sideline things, like just Karras obviously had some hamstring and knee issues as well, and he had a down shooting year. Like the fact that the Cavs got threes up at a good rate, 8th highest in the league, and they set the franchise record for made threes in a season, and basically all of your shooters kind of had a down shooting year, like that bodes well without even a change of system towards, you know, them having a step forward offensively. And when you combine, okay, the positive regression to the mean when it comes to them as shooters, plus, you know, a better offensive context, we hope, like there's a lot of reasons to believe, hey, this can work. So when you look at kind of the lineup data from one year to the next, I can understand it, especially if, you know, you don't want to get your hopes up and hurt by your favorite team, which is a valid way to approach things as fans, just not the way I do it. I can understand why you put more stock in year two, but you know, year one, man, like it's just so many more games, it's so many more minutes, and I just feel like injuries were the largest part of it. So from a Cavs standpoint, injuries and like it did feel like the vibe was just a little off last year. You know, it just felt like they weren't as connected. They didn't play. You know, like I felt like they literally ran worse offense. Whether that's a strategic thing or a freelance thing or execution thing, you know, whatever it may be, but like. You know, I just don't think last year was their year for, you know, myriad reasons. And like, I get if you are of the opinion that is going to be the new normal, then I do understand some skepticism. You know, and I think there's some, I see some of that. I feel some of those things. I just think ultimately when I can't find a better, more, you know, like what I would deem a meaningful, you know, change or upgrade, like it's like, yeah, then let's sit and see kind of how they bounce back this year, and again bounce back from making it to the second round and taking a game off the NBA championships or the NBA champions. Like worse things to check back in on. Yeah, and
a lot worse teams have run it back.
Yes,
maybe not this thoroughly. This is an unusual amount of run it back. I must acknowledge.
Yeah, but when you're talking about the top end talent, you're certainly right. And I think the other thing is, even with the fit being funky at times, right? Like you're still looking at lineup data that tells you overall better together. Like when it comes to the bigs, better together. When it comes to the guards, better together than apart, right? Like, and I still think you have to, assign some weight to that. And, incoming Cavs coach Kenny Atkinson has said how much he values kind of that lineup data and the on-off splits and all that good stuff. So I can understand why he would have, a good amount of confidence in that. And I feel you, like when you talk about, hey, like, I can understand why the previous season is going to have some weight on people's minds. Like, it impacts my confidence, right? Like, the most recent thing you saw was, okay, like a hobbled Cavs team trying to, put it together. The flow and the chemistry wasn't at the level that we've seen from them in the past. That is inevitably going to hurt your confidence, right? Like, I still have a very, very high level of confidence in the guard pairing working. I believe that the big man pairing can work, but like I'm less married to it than I have been in the past. But as I said in the last podcast with Mike, like when Jarrett is paid at this, at this rate, you can make you can have him come off, sit sometimes in the fourth quarter. You can make kind of those lineup decisions, and not that decisions are ever made on that, but like, and I know that's a point you've hit on many times, but like, I do think from a flexibility standpoint, like if something comes along, the Cavs can pivot, but there's also, a very valid way of thinking that, hey, as Evan Mobley gets better, this pairing that's already worked and they've been better together should become easier and easier to make tenable, especially if you're talking about making positive changes to the offensive system overall.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I do think, I'll continue to bang that drum that like the Cavs really should be looking to upgrade their 3-4s and find and that's in the form of internal development and shopping around the market, because Jarrett is not a high ego player,
No.
And there are plenty of teams where it does make sense to close with Evan at the 5, but you just have to have someone good enough at the 3 and the 4 to make that a valid choice, Mm-hmm. And like, so like, again, I continue to pound the drum of saying, hey, let's just keep upgrading the roster bit by bit, piece by piece. I think there has been movement in that direction. Obviously last year depth did not perform the way we wanted them to in the postseason. That's just the reality of the situation. I still think it was better than against the Knicks 2 years ago, which is saying something. But like, so, just get better piece by piece, stay around. Mm-hmm. And you know what always stays around, Justin? Zoom. Support for this podcast and the following message comes from Zoom. 500,000 businesses connect using Zoom, a single platform for phone, chat, workspaces, events, apps, and video. Zoom enables real-time collaboration for teams around the globe. Zoom, how the world connects.
I was just about to do it too.
I know you were.
You literally, I was like, okay, what word can I latch on here? What can I use to transition it? And now I've already forgotten my connecting word because you stole my segue.
Well, I was going to do when you said you weren't married to the pairing anymore, I said, we are married to our video conferencing software, but then you rambled for another, like, I want to say it was like 90 seconds and I couldn't go back to it.
As I am wont to do. Getting back to the Cavs and not ad reads, we talk about how Evan Mobley's offensive development can, ease any tensions when it comes to the fit between he and Jarrett Allen. And, I'm a sucker for this. Every single year, I'm a sucker for this. Just like I feel like Summer League is a time of just, unbridled optimism and hope and excitement. I love a summer workout video, and how aggressive Evan Mobley is in those summer workout videos and the hype videos, and, him hitting contested shots in people's face and holding the release, like all of that stuff gets me so damn excited, even though I know, translating that to the NBA is another thing, but man looks bigger. He looks more confident. The shot looks better. That's a lot of fun. But because we are talking so heavily about Jarrett Allen today, I'm curious to kind of get your thoughts on if you believe that there is, somewhere for Jarrett to go in terms of developing his game. I know, when we've talked about this in the past, a lot of it has just kind of been developing in the margins, but whether it's specifics or something that you saw from last season, which I think we both argue was his best season, that you think he can build off of, what comes to mind?
I gotta say, I think the guy's pretty close to his ceiling, and that is no slight. I think he's got, that last year, he just took so many jumps that it's hard to imagine more. You know, like I felt like he got so much better at every single marginal thing last year that it was really, really exciting to see. I really do think he was our second best player last year. Overall, I thought he was better than Darius, better than Evan.
And probably the most consistent. Like as good as Donnie was in that middle season stretch, like him being hurt at the start and the end of the year, like Jarrett Allen was kind of the guy that you could set your watch to.
Yeah, absolutely. So like I think he just made such a big jump last year that it's hard to imagine a bigger one. I would love to see him take that mid-ranger more confidently, given the percentage he shoots it at. I understand why he is not a volume mid-range jump shooter at the same time, but like I do think there is some value in almost, if I'm Kenny Atkinson, I might be saying like, hey, like be a little more free to take that one, because it's like if they come out at you even a step, it just gets so much easier to do the big to big stuff that if they're sagging so far off you, and we know we have 2 seasons of very reliable, solid enough volume data that says you're very good at this. It is, a mid-range shot. They say the mid-range died because all the efficiency metrics, but like Jarrett gets a good points per possession on his mid-range jumpers. And so like I'm absolutely fine to see him taking more. I'm seeing some people theorize that with Kenny here, Kenny joked about turning him into a 3-point shooter back in Brooklyn, I think I saw, or something like that. I
don't know how much of a joke that was.
Yeah, well, maybe it wasn't. And like that he might try to do that, like that, the idea that, we've all been talking about Evan as the stretch big, but actually what if it's Jarrett? And like, I mean, it would be cool. I just don't anticipate it happening. But I mean, it would be fun and exciting if he took 1 or 2 a game and made him at a decent rate, just as a bit of a game, as a bit of a, inverter in the just hanging in the dunker spot every time Evan is running his own pick and roll, just to give him a different court configuration. But like, I just think when you're this close to your ceiling as a player, most of your work happens in the margins. Most of it's just getting smarter and better at basketball.
Yeah, and I'm interested to see too, right? Like, he's 26 now. He's going to reach another stage of physical maturity. I think, adding a little more strength and continuing to kind of go into that grown man body, like that's why we always say, after 25, that's that 26 through 30 is usually the physical prime for players, and particularly big men. That's when it all starts to come together. Jarrett just had to come together so much earlier, and I mostly agree with you. Like, I don't think we're going to see any change in terms of like a skill development. But what I'm really interested in seeing with Jarrett and a lot of other guys, to be honest, is can those existing skills be used in a better context where, those, his short roll passing and just his playmaking overall, is that going to be used in a better way where there's more structure, there's more understanding of where everyone's supposed to be, there's more understanding of what your reads are on individual plays? Like, we talk about, obviously there's the Jokic level passers and the Sabonises that will pass guys open, but for the most part, good passing big men are simply just making the easy reads because they are usually catching it in such an advantageous position, right? Like, especially when they come up to the top of the key, you're able to find the cutters, right? If your head is up and you're kind of inclined to pass there. And, even having, Johnny Bryant come over from the Knicks, who was responsible for so much of bringing that offense out of the mud and getting that to another level. You have someone like Isaiah Hartenstein, who they use a lot as a passer, right? Especially in those second units without Mitchell Robinson. He averaged 2.5 assists per game in 26 minutes per game. Jarrett averaged 2.7 in 31, right? So obviously there's a minutes difference there, but Jarrett did prove himself to be a good passer. And I'm interested to see, all right, if there's a movement offense where we're looking to create advantage and trying to get guys within this offense easier looks. As much as we focus on Mobley being a hub, you're still going to get, in all likelihood, 15 minutes per game of Jarrett Allen being the center in a spaced lineup. And I'm interested to see, can we maximize those minutes? And can the skills that he developed and showed last year be put to a better use than they were last season?
Yeah, absolutely, man. It'll be, again, I do feel like Jarrett really found something as that high post hub when Evan was out. And I do feel, and I remember we talked at the time, like, hey, this is something you can capitalize on coming out of this, because he's still going to play those minutes alone. And I didn't really feel like they did that much in the aftermath. I did feel like he kind of just slid back into his role. So I want to see them constantly making teams make hard choices with both of their bigs as high post, creators and hubs. Because again, it just makes it easier on these small guards. It just does. And like giving them a running start, letting them catch the ball with advantage. I just don't see any reason why you wouldn't go out of your way every chance you could to do so.
Yeah, it's so funny looking back at last year because we always talk about, building momentum going into the playoffs. And there's part of me that just wonders how much validity there is to that, especially with the breaks and whatnot. Because when you look at the prior season, the first year with Donovan, it felt like, okay, they're stacking kind of successes, right? Like they finished the season so strong. I really felt like all four of the core were like playing at the best level that I had seen from them in their entire careers for the last half of the season. And then that just didn't translate to the playoffs at all. And then you look at this year where I think
I thought we were cooked.
I think, I think the largest component was availability. And that's why you weren't able to build on, hey, we're having this success and now we're going to add this wrinkle to the offense. It's tough to do that when Donovan misses post All-Star break and Darius isn't right. And all these guys are missing time. Like, it's really difficult to do that. But then they came out in game 1 and 2 and they just walloped the Magic, right? Like, they played great in those first couple games. Obviously, we find out after the fact that Jarrett sustained that injury early in that series, and it just kind of progressively got worse. And the series got a little hairier as a result of that. I think, the outstanding job that Mobley was able to do on Paolo when Jarrett was out there, we missed that. We really, really missed being able to put him on Paolo for as often as we did in those first few games. And he really got going as a result of that and made it more of a series. But, just the contrast in how it translated to the playoffs, maybe I'm reading into this too much. Maybe it's simply a matter of, well, yeah, like these guys went to the playoffs before and they had some struggles and they knew what to expect, even though as a team they weren't clicking at the same level. Maybe it's that. But it does kind of make me stop and wonder, okay, these cliches that I lean on so frequently, how much weight should I be putting into them?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fair, man. And I watched the Cavs put out a Jarrett best dunks video or best plays video, and I was like, man, I really like this guy. This is a fun player to watch, and like I'm just really excited to see him, with this whole team, with kind of a new verve and a new energy and a new spirit after, again, it was just a really weird year last year. And like I think you're very spot on to kind of question how much we should worry about a team's form going into the postseason and all that stuff, because again, this Cavs team, I thought we were cooked, and then they got a week off, and then they weren't so cooked, and they made it, into the second round. And so, like, but with all that said, like, I do think, just to kind of put a button on this Jarrett Allen topic, he has been an unbelievably good Cavalier. In many ways, he was the first step on this journey to us becoming a respectable team that, I remember that, the having to move Andre Drummond to the bench for him, and it being kind of like oh, wow, they really went for it here, but like they found such value, they had to do it. And, in a lot of ways, like that trade being such a high value proposition kickstarted this whole thing. And I'm glad he got rewarded with an extension. I'm glad the Cavs have all the flexibility that and security that comes with having a player like him locked up.
Yeah, I remember part of why I liked adding Andre Drummond and advocated for it before it happened. And obviously, the cost being so low was nice, but it was like, all right, let's see how this looks with the post up big. Like, well, how does that mesh with Garland and Sexton and, at the time, Kevin Porter Jr.? Like, how is this going to work out? And then it was just so apparent after Jarrett was at it. It's like, oh, Yeah, Garland and a elite pick and roll big. This is something that we can kind of work towards, and obviously, that's continued with Evan Mobley. You have Donovan Mitchell, who's so effective as a pick and roll ball handler, and that's as much as you want to have a variety of sets, that's still the lifeblood of a lot of offense, and it's usually just okay. How do we get to kind of a screen action, and what do we do from there? But when you have such versatile bigs like Allen and Mobley, it does open up a lot of options, right? When they're catching in the short roll, right? It's not a simple like DeAndre Jordan, Rudy Gobert. All right, let's hope that they catch this. Let's hope that they finish it. But like that's kind of the extent of the options here. It's a wide array of options when you're talking about Mobley and Allen getting that ball with advantage. So I'm really happy to have both of these guys here, and I'm excited to see, even if it is just kind of one less ride to see if this works and to see if we can build upon the successes of the last two seasons. I'm happy that we're just getting a little bit more time with this group because I still truly believe in my heart of hearts that this can click and this can work at a really high level. And I do think that they allow one another to do some really important things that can translate to playoffs basketball. We just got to get it to translate to playoff basketball, and hopefully the coaching changes can do so. We've talked about Jarrett, we've talked about Mobley. We know that they're going to be, starting center and backup center functionally, but as history has told us, I don't think you can expect players in the NBA to play more than 70 games. If they do, that is a bonus. That is awesome. But in those instances where bigs are missing time, it's important to have some depth at the position. What kind of big do you want added, Carter? And do you feel a little nervous that backup position hasn't been addressed yet?
Yeah, it's the one thing that I think, I look at the market, I look at what the Cavs have done, and I'm like, that doesn't feel very good, because last year, like when you're looking to fill that kind of position, you kind of just need a couple swings at it. You're signing minimum guys. You're not really counting on them to be able to play for you in meaningful minutes when they're at the minimum. So what did the Cavs do? They traded for Damian Jones, and then they signed Tristan Thompson. They just took a couple bites of the apple. Damian Jones didn't work out, and I wouldn't expect to see him back next year. His minutes just weren't very strong, and from the jump, it was like, this isn't going to play. But Tristan Thompson gave them fits and starts of really good minutes. He obviously the suspension kind of messed things up a little bit and took him out of his rhythm, and but like when he played, he was quite helpful, and absolutely was the minutes eater that they needed. The problem is, if Damian Jones was the swing and Tristan was the high floor option, any of the swing guys are just kind of not available anymore, Yeah. Like Mo Bamba got signed, and even the high floor guys, you're really going to have to rely. You look at who's available in the market. The only guys with really any meaningful tenure that are available are JaVale McGee, Tristan Thompson, Boban, and Bismack Biyombo.
Yeah.
So those are the guys with any pedigree. And in terms of like the upside swings, I don't even know if there are any. Omar Yurtseven, if you were a fan of his time with the Heat, is like semi-interesting, but not really.
He's still available?
Yeah.
I was into him. I would like to sign him. That's if you're talking about free agent signings, that is at the top of my list, and that is almost solely informed by a couple stretches of fantasy basketball play where I picked him up to fill in for Bam, and he's filling up the stat sheet. I'm all in on Yurtseven. Know what's wild about JaVale McGee? If you had to guess, what age season is he going into?
Well, I have it up on Spot Track right now, so I can't.
37.
Yeah,
like
he has had 16 years in this here NBA.
Can you believe that? Like there was so much talk of he's a knucklehead. He's not going to stick around in the NBA. I loved his time with the Cavs, and I love the fact that he's transformed himself into like kind of one of those veterans that teams just want to have around that can help contribute.
He was he was a good Cavalier. And the other shocker on the years of service list, by the way, is Bismack Biyombo, who has had a 13-year NBA career. I feel like he was dominating the Hoop Summit like 5 years ago.
Oh no. It feels like he's been around for a long time.
13 years is a long time, dude. Not that many players make it that long. Like he's probably like
on
a
those
90th
Raptors teams that we were beating in the playoffs. That was 8 years
I
ago,
know.
and he was in Charlotte before that. Like, we're getting an old dude.
I know that's the real crux of it. But like, he's probably like a 90th percentile tenure NBA player, which is crazy. Given that he had this big reputation, then obviously wasn't quite able to hit it. But I think of the kind of the wily vets group, I actually would rather it be JaVale. I think I like
good length.
I liked how he fit with. I like the idea of like playing him next to Evan a little bit, and just having arms all over the court.
And he's going to be good in the locker room as well, right?
Good in the locker room, won't have to play. Will be a good vibes guy. Tristan coming back would be interesting too. No doubt about that. And there's always the franchise legend factor that kind of gives him bonus points for the kind of the end of bench role. On the unsigned guys, or on the more upside guys, an old flame of mine, Harry Giles, is just hanging.
Oh my god!
But again, I'm mostly joking. It's the point is, I do think I get why the Cavs have not made moves, because Isaac Okoro's status is unresolved, and that could result in a trade, could result in an extension, could result or a new contract. Sorry, not an extension. Could result in all sorts of things, and you want to finish up your most pressing business before you move on to your end of bench fill out kind of business.
Yep.
And it is hard because a lot of the guys that you might have wanted are just signing in places where they're gonna get to play minutes. Like Mason Plumlee is gonna play for Phoenix. Yeah, he'll probably start a bunch of games for Phoenix when Nurk eventually gets hurt. Daniel Tice might start for New Orleans. Mo Bamba will almost certainly be in the initial rotation for that Clippers team. So you look up and down, it's like, yeah, you're probably not winning a lot of these arguments with these guys to be like, hey, do you want to play if Evan or Jarrett get hurt? So it's hard to get like too grumpy, but like at the same time, you do kind of still want to see someone that you want a couple bites at the apple, and like any bites they're going to get just don't feel that promising right now.
Yeah, I totally agree. When it comes to signings, I think I'd like to see them, at a 5. If they're addressing the backup big position via trade, which I think we have to acknowledge is, still a possibility.
Which is why you can't be mad, because it could change.
Yeah, right. I am not judging the offseason until the pencils are down, but if it is a trade, let's say if you agree with this take, I think I prefer to be a 4 or 5, like someone that's a little more of a power forward, but can viably like kind of switch on over to the 5. I just want to get kind of that depth solidified for Mobley. And if you're going to use an existing asset rather than just signing someone to a minimum contract, I think I would rather be kind of more of a 4 or 5.
Well, in the vein of asking the team to try some different stuff from an archetype perspective, they've done the journeyman center thing like 12 years in a row. It was like Ed Davis, then Robin Lopez, and then Tristan Thompson. And it's like, okay, how about like, that's fine, but like, what if we find a 4 or 5 that can do a little bit of both, So I think that's a very reasonable request or concept of like, hey, go try to chase someone that Robert Covington's still sitting out on the market. He might be the 4 or 5 that you might be interested in. I think he could reliably play spot minutes at the 5 if Evan or Jarrett were to go out for a few minutes here or there.
He's done it before.
Yeah. So I think that's a really good point, and I agree.
I forgot about Robert Covington. There's an old flame of mine,
and that's a flame. He might be near the end of it, but that's a flame. Speaking of, my great flame, Gordon Hayward hung it up.
That's literally where I was going to go. How you feeling, buddy?
Well, it's one of those things. And obviously, jokes aside, it's not like I shed a tear, but it's one of those things where it's like I did wonder if maybe OKC was just like a weird environment where he's like really good with, like, at his best, he has the ball in his hands. And OKC like did not need more dudes who wanted to dribble. So I was like, maybe it was one of those things where the fit just wasn't quite right. And, you know, at where he was at his stage of his career, he needed the fit to be quite right. And then the second you see that retirement, it's like, nope, he knew. He knew it was done. and that's one of those things where you just have to like kind of shrug and move on.
Yeah, well, the fit's always right with you, buddy. It's
Thanks,
good to have
buddy.
you back, even though it's a little brief. You're going back to Saudi Arabia next week, so we'll have a guest filling in for you.
You can't get this guy out of Saudi Arabia.
You're just getting all the frequent flyer miles. Good for you, buddy. But it's nice to have you back.
I'm going to cash that in on Saudi Airlines.
It's nice to have us back on YouTube because you're actually here. So that's a bonus. So thanks to everyone that tuned in live on YouTube. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. Click the notification bell so you know when we're going live. If you're listening via podcast and you want to support us, leave us a rating, leave a review, subscribe, unsubscribe, resubscribe, and help cook those books. If you want to be part of Chase Down's exclusive Discord chat, send a screenshot of the review to chasedownpod@gmail.com. However you choose to support us, we really do appreciate it. Make sure you guys are staying safe out there. Until next time, go Cav.